Hey, hello, everybody. This is Roger Hellman. I work for BMC Corporation, and I'm the Director of Solutions Marketing in the security business. And I'd like to welcome all of you to this webinar. I think you'll find it to be exceptionally interesting. And what we're going to do is we're going to separate the truth from the myths in cybersecurity. And we've got Dr. Larry Ponemon from the Ponemon Institute, who is our key speaker. And Larry's team does an absolutely phenomenal job conducting surveys throughout the industry and collecting data and drawing inferences from that data. And I think what you'll see here as we go through the truths and the myths is you'll see validation of a lot of the things that we believe are true. We'll also have visibility to some of the myths, and I guarantee there will be a number of surprises along the way. So I think this will be very well spent time. So Larry, would you like to say anything? A few words?
No, absolutely. I just want to start off by thanking you. It's been a pleasure to not only to co-present today, but to work with you in partnership on the really excellent research study that we're releasing today. So just want to say that we have some interesting material. All of this will be available to those interested in reading it in greater detail, and we'll tell you at the end of the presentation how you can get a copy of the report. With that being said, the title of the presentation is Separating the Truth from the Myths in Cybersecurity. Quite a mouthful. About our study, well, the purpose of our research is to better understand the security myths that can be barriers to a more effective IT and security infrastructure, and then to determine the truth that should be considered important for the overall security posture of an organization. In the context of this survey, cybersecurity truths are based on actual experiences of participants in our research. And in contrast, cybersecurity myths are based on their perceptions, beliefs, or sometimes referred to it as the gut feel.
Okay, super. Larry, how about if you just take us through the methodology? And after that, folks, what we'll do is we'll cover some of the findings at a summary level, and then we'll go into the detail. And I think, like I said earlier, a lot of numbers and data, but I'll tell you, there's always more to the story than a summary shows, and Larry will take us through the numbers and the data to really give us some insights into what's going on out there.
Well, thanks, Roger. And we basically are going to turn our attention to what's important to researchers, the methodology. How did you go about collecting the information and so forth? And as we look at our first methodology slide, we have a whole bunch of numbers. I'm not going to bore you with the gruesome detail, but there are a couple of important numbers to really focus on. First, the sample response is done here in North America, which is abbreviated by NA, UK, and then EMEA. Keep in mind that UK is part of EMEA, at least for now, but we basically are looking at continental EMEA. UK is a standalone subsample. And so in terms of the global sample, including these three regions, is over 1,300 respondents. In fact, 1,326 respondents. So that's not chump change. That's a pretty significant result. Probably the most important statistic of all is the response rate. Our response rate for the research is 3.3%. Now, if you're a researcher, you know that if you do a survey of experts, as we do here, normally a response rate north of or greater than 2.5% would be just considered enormous. So a 3.3% response rate should be celebrated, and we should be very happy that we not only have a large sample, but what seems to be a very reliable, good quality study. And we always love doing that. It doesn't always happen that way, Roger, but we're very happy that we got such great results. Now, kind of changing gears a little bit, we've cast a pretty wide cloth here, or net, with respect to the distribution of respondents by their position level. We have respondents who are executives, vice presidents, even SVPs and C-level executives. Small number, but definitely a powerful subsample, followed by director, manager. In terms of supervisor and above, more than half of the sample are a supervisory and above. Then staff and technician, which are our rank and file folks, and even a few administrative folks and consultants and contractors. the largest chunk of the pie, as you can see, the largest slice, at 38%, are staff and technicians. And these are people who we refer as rank and file. This doesn't mean they're not important or they're kind of too low level to be included in the study. In fact, many of our studies show that people who are staff and technicians who are rank and file know more about the state of security within their organization than their CISO, which is not a good finding if you're a CISO, but it's important to note that including these folks in our sample is very, very important. So again, in terms of sample size, and now in terms of the position level, we are starting to see that we have some very interesting and potentially interesting stats. The next slide is the distribution of respondents according to their reporting channel, otherwise known as their chain of command. And if again you notice that the largest slice of the pie, 43%, would be CIO or head of corporate IT, followed by business unit leader or general manager line of business, and also 20% the CISO or the CISO or head of security. If you kind of look at the 43 and 20% for the CISO, it's well more than half are in the IT side of the organization. But it's also important to note that many folks who are in IT security leadership positions are not necessarily in the corporate IT function. Many of these folks are in or will soon be part of the line of business. You know, they'll basically be more decentralized in operationalizing cybersecurity. So that 20%, if you did this study, I predict, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, it would have been less than 5%. Would have been line of business. Now it's 20%. And who knows, maybe in a couple of years it's going to be, you know, a number much greater than 20%, which I predict. Now, in terms of the size of the organization, we use headcount as our surrogate. The size of our sample is less than 500 people to way more than 75,000. So we have some organizations that we would call small to medium-sized businesses, say that's 1,000 or less, and the remainder are enterprise-sized organizations, roughly, you know, a very large organization, sometimes much more than 75,000 people, full-time equivalent employees. That's a big company. And then last and certainly not least, industry. Well, we do cover a whole bunch of industries, which is good. That means our results are generalizable across all these industry groups. That's good news. The bad news is that because we do that, some of the slices to our proverbial pie are just too small to do a carve-out. And most of us want to say, oh, gee, what's the number look like if we basically look at hospitality or transportation? Here we look at slices at 2% or less, not being large enough, even with an overall very large sample that's, you know, more than 1,300 strong. So keep in mind that that's a limitation, but we do have large enough subsamples like in financial services, public sector, I should say, services and health and pharma, and then industrial and manufacturing. These are large enough to do a carve-out by industry. So now I'm going to turn attention here to some very interesting truths. And Roger, do you want to take this slide?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Larry. Yeah, folks, what we'll do is walk through the summary, and along the way, you know, I'm not patient enough to wait for the numbers, so I might ask Larry a few questions, but I encourage you to stick around to see the detail behind this and the analysis and the percentages behind this, because I think we'll all learn some really interesting things. The first truth on the list here is that there's a skill gap in IT security, and I think most of us are aware of that. Again, it's good to have validation of something we already believe to be true. The second one I think is interesting because it says when poorly executed, key phrase, security patches can cause greater risk of instability than the risk of a data breach itself. Now, Larry, you know how impatient I am sometimes. Could you give us some insight as to what's behind this number?
Yeah, that's very interesting truth, because what we find is that organizations are not patching enough, so they basically are waiting for various and sundry reasons, which creates a lot of risk and potential problems down the road. But also a lot of the patches themselves are not tested for security. And so basically what we're using to update is actually introducing more security vulnerabilities. So it's a big issue, and the way to deal with that issue is, well, patch quickly, but test your patches. Just don't rely on the goodness of a software company telling you that you have to patch, and make sure that it doesn't have what looks like, you know, strange source code or, you know, some signal that you're dealing with a potential problem. Okay.
All right. Well, that's an interesting finding. So the next truth is that the cloud is cost-effective because it's easier and faster to deploy new software and applications than in an on-premises environment. I think we'll dig more into that in a few minutes. The next truth, greater visibility into all applications, data, and devices, and how they're connected lowers an organization's security risk. To me, and I'm anxious to see the results and the data behind this, but to me that says discovery is really important. And in fact, BMC views that as a high priority, and we have solutions for customers in that area. The next item, the next truth, malicious or criminal attacks are the root cause of most breaches. I'd say that's not real surprising. Strong security posture enables companies to innovate and take risks that can lead to greater profitability. I find that finding to be interesting, and look forward to the details. The next one sort of jumped out at me. The truth is that IT security and IT operations work closely to make sure resolution and remediation of security problems are completed successfully. Now, I think we all know that that's true, but, and Larry, I'd love your view on this. I think that we also sometimes see some misalignment between the two groups. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, Roger. Well, you're absolutely right. So it makes sense when you basically align IT operations and IT security because they're hand in glove. You know, the security guy, gal, wants to implement a new technology, but relies on the IT operations folks to implement and deploy that technology. If there are gaps or silos between these two groups, it means that things just aren't getting done. Things are at a stalemate. And if you're really in an organization that is dysfunctional in this regard, you see all sorts of bad things, including malicious behavior and, throwing snowballs at the other guy, in the wintertime. But seriously, it does create a huge problem when you have this kind of misalignment. And we know that a lot of organizations try to spend some serious resources in overcoming that challenge.
Okay, very good. And then the last truth on this chart is many organizations are suffering from investments in disjointed, non-integrated security products that increase both cost and complexity. And I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of customers, and I had one customer who had 48 different security products. A lot of times purchased simply to solve the problem of the day or address the latest security breach. So, and they were telling me that cost, complexity, maintenance, training, all of those things were big detractors from that kind of an approach. So, okay, well, folks, now we're going to go to the myths. So this is a list of security myths, things that the findings showed are not correct. So the first one is too much security diminishes productivity, and I've heard this myth before. And Larry, could you give us some insights into this myth and why it's not really the case?
Yeah, so the general view here is that security is the function of no. In other words, also auditors find this reality true that, basically when the organization has to deal with security, the general view is it's painful. They tell us we can't do certain things even though we need to as part of our, revenue goal and all of that good stuff. But so they see it as diminishing the business of the organization and, vis-a-vis a lack of productivity. But the reality is that security and productivity can go hand in glove. Think about an organization that's selling a new product, like an IoT product, like a medical IoT product, like a pacemaker. If basically there's insecurity in the device, you could die, you could be harmed. So security basically allows you to make pacemakers that are safe and secure. And that's a bad example because no one likes to think of pacemakers. But the moral of the story is security in many and maybe most cases is a way of meeting your business strategies and tactical goals. So the fact is we label it a myth because productivity shouldn't really suffer in that regard.
Okay. Okay, the next myth, a strong security posture does not affect consumer trust. And to me, that one's fairly intuitive, but again, it's nice to see validation. The next two jumped out at me, to be quite honest. as myths. First one is automation is going to reduce the need for security expertise. And the next one, artificial intelligence and machine learning, will reduce the need for IT security expertise as well. These two are myths. Larry, could you give us some insight into why these are myths?
Right. So automation is kind of interesting because I think it makes us better at what we do. It augments and supports the things that need to be done from an IT security perspective. And so the idea is that the more we can rely on the things that are repetitive and actually pretty boring if you're doing it manually as an IT security specialist, the fewer of those kinds of activities allows us to focus on more important things. That does require the kind of high-level human intervention. So automation, even though some people believe it will replace people, there's like less of a need to have IT security expertise in-house or even through third parties. There's no evidence of that, and we think it's clearly a myth. And the same is true with the next bullet on AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. It will not reduce the need for IT security expertise because it will only augment to make what we do better and more efficient.
Okay, super. And not to give a commercial, but BMC has solutions for security automation, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. So I think we probably placed our bets in the right place. We certainly want to invest to help our customers. Now, the next myth: it is difficult or impossible to allocate the time and resources to patching vulnerabilities because it leads to costly business disruptions and downtime. To me, that one made sense as a myth because, if anything, not patching would lead to costly business disruptions and downtime. Did I get that right?
Got it right.
Okay. All right. The next one, insider threats, it's a myth. The next myth is insider threats are costlier to detect and contain than external attacks. That sounds right as a myth. The next myth is nation-state attacks are mainly a threat for government organizations. I guess the point there is that they can be a threat to all organizations.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think
okay.
That, countries like China and other countries that are potentially adversarial with the United States, and they get more value at hacking a consumer database than a government agency. So you can't just say nation-state attacks only focus on government or not-for-profit or public sector organizations.
That's kind of scary, but
it's depressing and
okay. Yeah. And then the last myth on the page is that security intelligence tools provide too much information to be effective in investigating threats. I would think you want to hit the sweet spot. The more information you have, provided it's not so much that it's unwieldy, would help an organization be more effective in investigating a threat.
Agreed.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So
now we're going to do a deeper dive.
Yeah, Larry, why don't you take us to the deeper dive and go through the actual percentages and the data behind these findings?
Absolutely, my pleasure. Did a nice job there, thank you. That was kind of there were two long lists. I think they're all very interesting. Okay, so this slide, a few things I need to do is set up the numbers to make you understand what we mean by these percentages. So what we do is we use a 5-point scale in the survey. And by the way, folks, the survey questions will be provided in the research report. And, when you basically look at the questions, you can see the full response, not just the partial response showing here. But basically, strongly agree, unsure, disagree, strongly disagree. The agreement side of the scale is strongly agree and agree. The midpoint, which is the unsure, normally is associated with disagreement. You're probably saying, why is that the case, Larry? And there's actually a whole psychology of surveys, or the way surveys get implemented. And this 5-point scale is very popular. So despite the risk, many companies are not investing in technologies that increase visibility. Because we keep on saying the key to our success is visibility, greater visibility and more control. And if you don't have investments in tools that create visibility, you might not be doing the right thing. So here's how we look at the grading of that. In our organization, decisions about the purchase of enabling security technologies and other investments are consistent with our overall IT strategy. That's a good thing. 60% believe that to be true or strongly agree and agree. 1 minus 60% or 40% are on the other side of the scale. They're disagreeing or they're unsure. The next variable, our organization is investing in tools to increase visibility into all applications, data, and devices, and how they are connected. 45% agree or strongly agree, or 1 minus 45%, is a clearly showing, 55% are in disagreement. Shall I continue?
Yeah, let's go back to that one just for a second, Larry,
Okay.
Because to me, discovery is really important. You can't ensure security and make sure that a device is secure if you don't know it's there. So, in our business, we recommend to customers that they put discovery solutions in place so they know what's out there, and then automate their vulnerability management as well, because vulnerability scanners pick up a lot of good data. They pick up vulnerabilities that need to be addressed and patched by the operations team. But the thing is, sometimes you'll find, our customers will find a server, for example, that was added to the network, and for one reason or another, it didn't get scanned. So we call that a blind spot. And we find that the combination of discovery, scan data, and vulnerability automation allows a customer to have visibility to not just what they've discovered and scanned, but also what they've discovered and have not scanned. And therefore, they can go ahead and patch the vulnerabilities and eliminate that blind spot. So I think this is a really interesting finding. I wish the number was higher than 45%, because I find this to be a little bit disturbing.
It's a little disturbing to me. Maybe more than a little bit. Moderately to high level of disturbance. Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Okay.
commenting. Okay, we'll do the same here. How purchasing decisions are made in security technologies. Again, strongly agree and agree response. And so what are we grading here? In our organization, we often make decisions about the purchase of enabling security technologies and other investments when there is a well-publicized data breach or security exploit. 50% believe that to be true or agree or strongly agree. In other words, we make investments as part of maybe a knee-jerk reaction to problems, like when a big data breach occurs, and especially if it hits a competitor to you, you might say, we're the next we're likely to become the next victim of this type of attack, and the organization gets newfound religion and makes investments. Probably not the best way to make decisions in technology, but in reality it does happen quite a bit. And then the second bar, 34%, our organization has reduced investments in security technologies because of the purchase of cyber insurance. And that's kind of a scary result, because that implies, at least I think, that organizations think they can basically do fewer good security things, activities or technologies, if they have insurance, that it's just one offsets the other. And I don't think that's the way insurance works in this space. So anyway, Roger, any comments on this slide?
Yeah, the only comment I would make is on the first bar, the 50%. Again, I think this is how organizations end up with 48 different disjointed, not integrated security tools. And that's not an approach that we at BMC recommend. I mean, what we recommend is that customers, build a plan, execute to that plan. And as I said earlier, one type of solution would be put scanners in place, put discovery in place, put automated vulnerability and patch management into place, put server automation in place to deploy those patches, integrate with change management, and close everything out in a very orderly and integrated and cost-effective way.
Nicely said. Changing gears now, Roger, can problems with patching lead to a data breach? I think the answer is yes. What do I know? Well, let's kind of look at these numbers. Okay, patching vulnerabilities can lead to a data breach. Data breaches occur because of poor patch management. Probably that's not the only reason, but poor patch management is kind of one of the factors that exacerbates or increases the likelihood of a data breach. 68% believe that to be true. Second, security patches can cause greater risk of instability than the risk of a data breach. Interesting. 53% believe that to be true. Okay, that's kind of an interesting result. And then third, patching vulnerabilities is difficult because it leads to costly business disruptions and downtime. 45% believe that to be true. Roger, I'd love to get your reaction to these responses.
Well, I know it's coming, and you'll give us a breakdown between the security and the operations teams and their view on these things. So I think there's some interesting results there, some interesting findings. The only thing I would say is really a question. The top bar says data breaches occur because of poor patch management. And I know you touched on this a moment ago, Larry, but what exactly is poor patch management? Because what I think of, and I could be wrong, but I contrast manual patch management versus automated. And to me, automating a best practice will always carry the day versus doing things in a manual way, which can be more error-prone and inconsistent and just yield a lower quality result. But is that what's going on here, or is there something else?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the days of the spreadsheet are gone. And you are, even if you're a smaller size organization, you're probably dealing with a bunch of security issues, and the possibility of having unpatched devices is probably a very high likelihood. So I agree completely. I think it's the difference between manual versus automated, and even under the category of automated well. Not halfway automated solution, but a fully automated solution. That's ideal.
Yeah, and when I look at the data in the industry, and I know you look at it much more than I do, but I mean, the vulnerabilities just year on year just keep increasing in number. The workload for the security team and the operations team just keeps increasing. Without automation, I don't know how an organization is going to be able to keep up. I don't know how they're doing it today. And to me, automation from start to finish really just enhances the productivity of staff and allows a customer to do more with the same number of people that they have.
Absolutely agree with that statement. Okay. Now, drum roll, a new section. What practices strengthen or diminish an organization's security posture? Okay, I think we know something about that, Roger. Let's see what the response is. Response to threats and security incidents are reactive. So let's see, what did we grade? Our organization tends to focus on rapid response to security incidents because prevention of incidents is too hard to accomplish. 60% believe that to be true. The next bar, our organization's approach to dealing with threats is reactive, focusing on the immediate threat or hack du jour. 53% believe that to be true. What do you think, sir?
I, again, find these to be a little bit disturbing. I mean, I appreciate the honesty of the respondents to the survey. To me, that's one indication of a high-quality research study. But to me, you got to get ahead of the curve. Being reactive in this day and age is not going to cut it. And so again, that's why we work with our customers to implement security solutions that can allow them to become proactive, get ahead of the curve, automate, and do what's needed to keep their data safe and secure.
Agreed. Great response. Okay. Now we're looking at the infamous governance practices, perceptions about governance practices. Still using that strongly agree and agree response. How did we grade this? A well-informed and involved CEO and board of directors is critical to a strong security posture. 55% believe that to be true. Our organization can achieve a strong security posture that does not diminish productivity. Remember that? 46% believe that to be true, or 54% do not believe that to be true. That's interesting. The third, in our organization, security is considered a tactical activity that reduces its importance in the eyes of senior management. 39% believe that to be true. And then achieving compliance has no effect on our organization's security posture. 35% believe that to be true, and 65% do not believe that to be true. How do you like that? There is some interesting data points here, Roger. What do you think?
Yeah, very interesting. I tend to gravitate towards the last one, actually, because, again, the inverse would be 65% believe that compliance does have an effect on their organization's security posture. BMC can help customers automate compliance with servers and networking devices. And again, I think we may have placed the right bet because we've got 65% of the respondents saying that compliance is important. But all of these things really are very insightful and just underscore the need for strategic thinking and focus higher up in the organization on security.
Agreed. Okay, here's now changing gears, Roger. Now we're looking at staffing and staffing issues in IT security specifically. Strongly agree response. And how did we grade this? There is tension between IT security and IT operations because of a lack of alignment. There are different priorities. That's an interesting finding. We've talked a little bit about it already. The second bullet, when hiring IT security staff, it is more important for the candidate to have aptitude and training and credentials. I think that's very cool. And then third, automation is going to reduce the need for IT security expertise. Only 38% believe that to be true, or 62% don't. Roger, I need your insight.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thanks. The first one jumps out at me, the tension between IT security and IT operations. We see that as well. I've seen it with the customers I've worked with, customers I've called on. And one of the things that we at BMC have done is we've come up with a vulnerability management automation solution that actually helps these two groups work together much, much better. One tool that both organizations can use, one dashboard designed specifically for the security folks, one designed specifically for the operations folks. It can be customized very easily, but they also give one team visibility into what the other one is doing. And actually, I think when the more that we can do to bridge the gap between these two groups of people, the better the result is going to be. So, I mean, that one really jumped out at me. And then the middle one and the bottom one, I think we kind of have talked about those already, especially the last one about automation and the need for security and the impact that it can have to improve the productivity of security personnel.
Nicely said, my friend. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to look at are public and private clouds considered less secure than on-premises? And so let's look at the 51%. Just about half, a little over half, believe that public cloud is less secure than on-premises, but only by a small percentage, 1%. In the second bar, at 44%, private cloud is less secure than on-premises. 44%, which is pretty high. It's not exactly halfway, but it's moving in that direction. And it's interesting, Roger, if you asked me this question, and what do I think, and now we'll go back even more than 5 years ago, everyone would say, we like cloud because it's cheap, but if I have to worry about security, I'm staying on premises. I'm not going to take the risk. I think a lot of organizations rethought that. They said, we could have cheap or cost efficient and improvement to security. So that's why I think these numbers are so interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. I've run into customers who in the past were reluctant to put things in the cloud. They wanted to keep them on premises for security reasons. I've run into some other customers who say that that may be the case, but I'm not convinced that my on-premises is all that bulletproof either. And so when they move to the cloud, they use it as an opportunity to implement cloud security solutions
Interesting. Yeah.
that will allow them to re-engineer at leapfrog and actually make their cloud more secure than on-premises. Not an easy task, but I think that's the path to success in the future.
Well, that's very interesting. I think you're right about that. You know, your migration to the cloud is an opportunity to really make things better because, you know, you're expecting lots of variance and changes and even support, financial support from a buy. So that's the time to do it. That makes good sense. Okay, changing gears. Why is the public cloud less secure than on-premises? So this is for those people, a subset, who said the public cloud is less secure than on-premise. And the number one, 60%, lack visibility of the sensitive or confidential data collected, processed, and stored in the cloud. Number two, again, lack of visibility into all cloud applications that are in use. And then the third bullet, lack of visibility into all cloud platforms that are in use or used. Then we have no clear accountability and centralized control. And then finally, inability to limit access and enforce security protocols. And other is very small, negligible, and none of the above. Any comments here or findings here that are interesting to you?
Well, again, I think the word visibility just keeps coming up, and I think that's important. You can't make sure it's secure unless you know what you can't make things secure unless you know you have them, and once you have them and you have visibility to them, you've got to keep an eye on them.
Excellent. Nicely said. Okay. Why is the private cloud less secure? This is again for the private cloud folks. Why is it less secure than on-premise? And as you can see, the list looks almost identical to what we had on the other cloud, on-prem comparison. Okay, so lack of visibility of the sensitive or confidential data is now number one. Lack of visibility in all cloud platforms used. And here is number 3 is no accountability. So it's basically saying the same things. Any comments on this slide?
The only thing I would say is I'm really curious to see what this slide will look like 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I think you notice the percentages, there's not one above 50% or below that threshold. So I think that over time, certain issues around visibility will become more the standard. We'll see better applications that are relying on visibility, the ability to see these things, to understand your traffic. So I agree with you. This is something to look at, trend it out like 2 to 3 years in the future.
Yeah.
Those are always interesting. To look at trends. We predict as a research institute different trends, and we have about a failure rate of about half, about 50%. So, rely on us to give you the best possible prediction. We're going to change gears a little bit, Roger, and we're going to look at differences between those folks in IT operations who completed the survey versus those who are in IT security who completed the survey. So we have 2 subsamples of our overall sample. And it produced some interesting differences.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just think this is tremendous. I mean, you guys did a great job splitting this out.
Yeah, well, I think it reveals something that's very interesting and pretty powerful. Just for the audience, when we look at a difference of greater than 5%, again, this is as a rule of thumb, the number is actually a little bit lower, like 4.5%. We call that the margin of error. So if you see a difference greater than, say, 5%, assume it's statistically significant at the 95% level of confidence. So let's kind of look at some of these data points. Data breaches occur because of poor patch management. Remember, that was one of the items we looked at. For those people in ITO or IT operation, it's 77% believe that to be true. If you're in IT security, it's only 64% believe that to be true. Next one, our organization's approach to dealing with threats is reactive, focusing on the immediate threat or hack de jure, 55% for ITO, and 49% for ITS. And finally, automation is going to reduce the need for IT security expertise, 41% ITO and 34% ITS. Any comments, sir?
No, I tend to look at where there's the biggest divergence, and it would be on the top one about data breaches and having them occur because of poor patch management. But on the other hand, these 2 groups have different alignments sometimes, and yet both are still 2/3 or higher agree. So that, I think it's a good finding.
So it's all trending in the same direction, but the intensity, the blue versus the red, the blue is outperforming each of these questions by a statistically significant amount.
Yeah.
Here is just the opposite, where the red bar is longer than the blue bar. So this is perceptions of IT security. Remember, we use that strongly agree response combined. So decisions about the purchase of enabling security technologies and other investments are consistent with their overall IT strategy. Again, the red is 64%, that's ITS, and the blue is 57%. The organization tends to focus on rapid response to security incidents, 64% versus 56%. A well-informed and involved CEO and board of directors, 58% versus 51%. We often make decisions about the purchase of enabling security technologies and other investments when there is a well-publicized data breach or security exploit. There's a whopping difference here of 53% for IT security folks versus 37% for the IT operations. Then our organization can achieve a strong security posture that does not diminish productivity. 68% believe that to be true in ITS versus 40%. Notice that, again, that blue bar is shorter than the red bar in every case. That surprise you at all, Roger?
It does. Some of these, I mean, I could speculate as to the reason why, but I think in some cases it could just be that the security team has more visibility to what their security strategy is going to be. The operations team will look at security strategy and go beyond and just look at what's needed from an operations standpoint. But still, some of the divergences here are they really catch my eye, particularly the one about purchasing enabling technologies when there's a well-publicized exploit or breach. So, yeah, interesting.
Very interesting. Okay, we'll wrap this up now pretty quickly. I'll just talk about a few of the findings. But here, IT operations and IT security areas are mostly in agreement. That's like within that 5% spread. You notice that there are some differences. The biggest difference is the top at 55 versus 60%. In our organization, there is tension between IT security and IT operation because of a lack of alignment. And then at the bottom of the list, again, about a 5% difference, which is statistically significant. Achieving compliance has no effect on our organization's security posture. Comments?
I'd say let's just keep going.
Okay.
But good results.
Yeah, by the way, it is a pleasure co-presenting with you. This is a lot of fun for me, so thank you.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Cool, that's great. Let's go to our next slide. Looks like a fun slide. Let me try to move it here. Sorry, my finger got stuck. So this is the BMC slide.
Yeah, this is where BMC comes in, folks. So I just wanted to mention that the study that the Ponemon team and that Larry led and did uncovered a lot of things. I found some things that validated what I believe to be the case. A few surprises, though, along the way. But the key point here is BMC can help. We have a solution for vulnerability management, TrueSight vulnerability management, and it can solve a lot of the problems that we discussed along the way here today. We can import data from security scanners, analyze it. We can detect blind spots with BMC's integrated solutions. And in the end, what we do is we initiate remediation based on priorities and business impact. So we look at vulnerabilities, help customers analyze that data based on business impact, and then once those priorities are set, we initiate the remediation using automated solutions. And this is for the on-premises data center, but also for cloud hosted environments. On top of that, server automation via TrueSight server automation. So we can automate patching, configuration management. We saw that 65% of the respondents viewed compliance and configuration management as important. We can automate provisioning, automate tasks, deploy software, and again, both in the data center as well as in cloud-hosted environments. So with that, I want to turn it back over to Larry, and he can talk a little bit more about the study.
That's great. Thanks again, Roger. Well, the final slide is on caveats and limitations. And so when you do surveys are really powerful tools, and they give you lots of information if you do it right. But sometimes there are inherent biases that you need to know about these and deal with them when they occur. And if you don't, you actually could have very skewed results that are very difficult to understand and analyze. The three big ones: number one, non-response bias, which is basically says the people that chose to do the survey are different than the people who do not. There are ways of testing for it and also making adjustments to your sampling process and sampling frame as a result. But keep in mind that that's one of those areas of bias that almost always exists in surveys, especially web-based surveys, but all surveys. The second bullet, sampling frame bias. When we do a survey, our goal is to have the data points represent the underlying population. We don't know the population. There are different ways of accurately estimating it. But the bottom line is that sometimes there is bias in the way the results kind of stack up. Again, there are ways of identifying it and making adjustments to the sample if necessary as a result of finding the sampling bias problem. And then the third bullet is by far the hardest to contain or deal with. That's the self-reported results. So when you take a survey on a beautiful day, sun shining, everything's going your way, have a survey and strongly agree to strongly disagree, and naturally you want to be good, this is a great day, you feel good, and you just mark the X in the strongly agree column. Same person, cloudy or freezing cold, shoes get wet, that kind of a day. Basically, you have that survey strongly agree to disagree, and I'm going to be disagreeable, and I'm going to fill out the form, the disagreement button. This is something that happens all the time, and what we do as researchers, we count on the law of large numbers. And when we do a survey, sometimes you'll have people who are having a bad day, they'll report one way, and those people who are having a good day will report in such a way that they will cancel each other out. So anyway, just wanted to alert you to this, but beyond that, we're very, very pleased with the results of this study, and it has been an absolute pleasure working with you, Roger, and BMC.
Well, we feel the same way about your team, Larry. Working with you is always a pleasure. And, I'll tell you, I'm always impressed with the quality of the research that you and your team does. The facts and data, the analysis, everything is just tremendous. So just want to say thanks. And as far as questions are concerned, I think, the Ponemon Institute can answer any question you folks in the audience have. I would also encourage you to go to the BMC website and have a look at our security solutions. We can help in many, many ways. So I want to thank you very much for listening and taking part in this webinar.